The aim of life. Let's continue our practice and be in the present moment with mindfulness in the base. Relax your body and calm your mind, and be aware when you are inhaling and exhaling. The aim of our practice is not peace, tranquility, or temporary happiness, but to learn the right principle and follow the right path. Some of you practice correctly and have walked almost to the end of the path, and some of you need more time to accumulate the 10 paramis. We are all attending this retreat because we need to learn the principles of the right path and clearly understand the practice method. Then we will apply our right understanding to the practice method. When we practice insight meditation, we will often see the 3 marks of existence. Everything is impermanent, suffering, and no self. As the mind develops, we will question our life and think, life is so short, why was I born and why will I die so soon? And will search for the meaning of life. The mind searches wildly, seeing only that it is to bear suffering and die. When we are born into each life, we have to experience sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, despair, and distress. And we have to encounter people and things we don't like. We have to separate from people and things we do like, and we often don't get what we want. This is the truth of life and suffering. Each life must end in death, no matter who we are, rich or poor, tall or short, handsome or ugly. We all have to walk to the end of life, and death is following at each step we take. Life is really short and stressful, but most people are so attached to sensual pleasure and only value external objects because they have never learned about any other way of being and about the cause of suffering. When they suffer or have problems in life, they try to get rid of what they think is the cause of suffering, but because it is not the true cause of suffering, they never succeed. As an example, if I am upset and suffering because someone shouted at me, I think that the cause of my suffering is that person. But in fact, it is my own attachment to my ego or image of myself and craving to preserve that ego and prevent any harm from coming to it. Most people are only looking outside at the external world and objects and complain about other people and things in the world instead of looking inside and observing how their own mind is reacting. If we do look inside, we will see the real cause of suffering. Because the external object doesn't matter. It's our attachment to that object that is the problem. Simply put, the cause of suffering is the craving and clinging to what we want and what we don't want. Each time external objects contact our 6 sense doors, a thought is automatically generated which causes defilements and self or ego, a sense of self, to arise. Sometimes we feel very peaceful, but this is an illusion because our 6 sense doors haven't been impacted by any external event or object. As an example, if I turn on the TV and watch the news, I may instantly become upset because of what I see. But if I don't turn on the TV and have no contact, I may remain feeling peaceful. Let's always be mindful because everything that contacts our 6 sense doors, whether good or bad, and causes the mind to think, is extremely valuable because we can see how our mind reacts and see the cause of suffering and how the sense of self arises at that time. We may feel good when we are alone or with family, but when we are in the outside world, things might not be as we wish. This person is pretty, that one is ugly, and this object wants me to buy it. If we don't have mindfulness, craving and clinging will cause us to take action. The external object, thing, or person will control our mind. Normally, people are not at the base and are controlled by sense desires. I want to see, touch, taste, smell, and hear, to consume. When we are in the world and contacting external objects to satisfy our cravings, that is when our karma, our action in the past, is bearing fruit, the consequences of our past actions. Each time the mind wanders off and attaches to an external object, We pay with our life. We lose our freedom because we are being controlled by our cravings. In this context, life means each mind that arises at each moment of time. As an example, I may be living my normal, ordinary life when I suddenly become violently attached to something, like a perceived threat or insult, on the spur of the moment, because a new mind or life has arisen, and I take action that will have terrible consequences and that I will regret forever. Or when I am dying and I have become attached to a thought, this can cause me to be reborn in a realm that reflects the feeling of that thought: angry, sad, deluded, happy, averse, or loving, heaven or hell, one of the 31 realms of reincarnation. Our craving searches the external world and becomes attached to acquiring sense objects, and we form that intention. When we automatically and unconsciously become attached to objects, we are falling into the hunter's trap. The hunter is ignorance, and ignorance sets the bait and traps us. This is the result of our past actions. Being unmindful, we act according to the consequences of our past actions and take the bait of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. The external object is the trap that pulls us away from the base. Whatever we come in contact with, whatever happens to us, good or bad, is a result of our past actions, good or bad. After the past action has borne fruit, good or bad, through the 6 sense doors, the mind will be attached to the fruit, the external object. Then the 4 cankers, the asavas, or indulging in sense pleasure, holding wrong views, craving for becoming, and ignorance that we have been identified with for a long time, in which our habitual, the me, will arise. When we attach and cling to the thought, it will control our mind to take action, and the consequence of this action will be stored in the subconscious mind for repayment in the future. When we store the consequence of the present action in the subconscious mind, this will be added to the latent tendencies, which are the strong and invisible defilements that are waiting deep in the mind to emerge. There are 7 latent tendencies: the latent tendency of lust for sense pleasure, the latent tendency of aversion, the latent tendency of conceit, the latent tendency of wrong view, the latent tendency of doubt, the latent tendency of becoming, and the latent tendency of ignorance. These latent tendencies are the strongest defilements because they control the weaker defilements, and they work together as a team, supporting each other. The first step is when there is contact with the 6 sense doors and the mind creates greed, delusion, and aversion. The second step is when the mind is clinging to the defilement of self. Then craving will control the mind to take action. The third step is when the action is completed and stored in the subconscious mind, adding energy to the latent tendencies. The wheel of dependent origination is turned when the action is completed and stored in the subconscious mind. Whenever the 6 sense doors contact external objects and cause mental states to arise, that is a good opportunity for the practitioner to maintain mindfulness and wisdom. Most people don't have mindfulness and never practice to be in the present moment with mindfulness at the base. Each time the mind is contacted, thought will arise and the mind will wander off and cling to external objects. Then the mind will cling to the thought and create action or karma through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. This will cause feelings of liking or disliking to arise, and then craving and clinging will control our mind to take action, and suffering will follow. Craving is the new cause that controls our mind to take action and store the consequence of the action in the subconscious mind, energizing ignorance to turn the wheel of rebirth and death. Each time we attach and cling to a thought, we are creating becoming, the future realm into which we will be reborn. If this happens very often, it will become a canker or a habitual identity. I think of myself as being an angry or sad person as an example. Then this will cause the latent tendency or ignorance to grow and become more powerful. Whenever our mind is deluded and wanders from the base, it will create the four cankers and latent tendencies because we're not being mindful, and it will store the consequence of the action in order to repay at death and rebirth. It is like a fish that swims in water. The fisherman has hidden the sharp hook inside the food and dropped it into the water. Then the hungry fish sees the food and craves it, swallows the food, and gets caught by the fisherman. The foolish fish lost his mind to sensual pleasure, and it took away its life. Just like our mind wanders off to sensual desire and clings to it, good or bad, like or dislike, turning the wheel of samsara and waiting for the right time to pay back. We need to be mindful in the present moment and aware of what is going on in our life and objectively observe how the mind is reacting to it. Then the mind will see the true nature of the body and mind and detach and separate from phenomena. This will cause wisdom to arise to see everything as impermanent, suffering, and no self. Then we will be free from storing the consequences of our action, and the self or ego will get smaller. That's why many teachers say mindfulness is necessary everywhere and at all times. To be well and happy, we need to have mindfulness and wisdom in our daily life. When we are experiencing suffering, we need to have mindfulness at the base. We will escape from the trap that the hunter, ignorance, has set for us. This hunter always fools us over many lives. He can control us and causes us to be reborn and to be this person in the present life and to have this habitual identity. We have been caught in this trap for many lives where we sink into the cycle of suffering and cannot find our way out. Whenever and wherever we are reborn, the hunter gives us delicious food and sensual delights so that we are deluded and become attached to them, and they become ourself, or me, he, she, our kids, our house, our car, our job, we and ours. The me and mind, or ego, just gets bigger the more we attach and cling to objects and phenomena. When we feel satisfied, comfortable, and are enjoying what we are grasping, we will attach and cling to it. Then suffering will follow because we don't have the wisdom to realize that everything is impermanent, suffering, and no self. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, and death is suffering. When we are born, we have to encounter sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. We will encounter unhappiness and a lack of love, and finally we all will die. We don't want to confront this reality, but we cannot escape it. When we are born, we must get old, sick, and die. When normal people are going to die, the last mind of this life, at the last moment before death, will create the process called the death mind. And this mind will be deluded and attached to the last thought, which will create the next life in whatever realm we will be reborn in, one of the 31 realms. If we are attached to wholesome thoughts, we may be reborn in a happy realm, such as heaven or the human realm. We may have a heavenly being's eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, or a heavenly being's or human's sixth sense doors. Heavenly beings still have defilements, desires, and cravings, and perform actions. They still crave pleasant and sensual experience, which makes them become lost in happiness and a blissful life. When heavenly beings are about to die, their body and possessions will transform from the most beautiful to the most horrible, and will quickly decay and become the opposite of what they were. They will instantly become upset and disappointed and will attach to the last thought, aversion, delusion, greed, and so on, that will cause them to be reborn in hell or in one of the woeful realms below. Most heavenly beings are lost in sensual pleasures and cling to them as self, and cannot be mindful. Ignorance compels them to enjoy sense pleasures craving and clinging, and to store the consequences of their actions in the subconscious mind. Life in the heavenly realms is the result of the last thoughts stored in the subconscious mind before death. The heavenly realms are so enjoyable with all the sensual pleasures that even if a heavenly being were interested in studying Dhamma, it would be very hard because of the distraction of the beauty, happiness, and sensual pleasures in the heavenly realms. Let's talk about human beings. Many people are Buddhists, but how many of them have a right understanding and practice insight meditation and know the core of Buddha's teaching? This life is a perfect place to learn and provides all the perfect resources that we need to study and walk the right path with the right understanding. If we don't practice now in the present life, it will be extremely difficult to find another opportunity to do so. We don't know how long our life will last. How long will we be in this world? Today might be our last day. This might be the last time we wear this shirt, and this meal might be our last in this life. Life is so short and impermanent, can't be controlled, and is suffering. If we learn how to develop wisdom, we will be happy in the present moment with mindfulness and objectively observing at the base. Right mindfulness will arise spontaneously and will cause right concentration to separate the mind from the body, and then right concentration will cause wisdom to see the true nature of the body and mind just as they are, the three marks of existence. This is called living life with wisdom. With right effort and the perfecting of our practice until the mind clearly understands the truth of all things, the mind will become equanimous and unbiased. Then wisdom will arise spontaneously and in every moment when we walk, sit, sleep, speak, talk, drink, and think. Right mindfulness and wisdom will prevent our mind from clinging and attaching, and will cause the mind to be free from suffering, with no more death and rebirth. Now we have found the aim of our life, to walk the middle path until the mind realizes the cessation of suffering. We have first been studying the concepts and principles of the Buddhist teaching to know the outcome of the teaching and practice. The right views or right understanding will clear our mind and give us faith to walk the path. Secondly, we need to apply the teaching of how to practice. We need to transfer the principles of this knowledge to the practice of walking the right path. Practitioners need to develop discipline and effort in perfecting the 10 paramis, the 10 perfections, to support their practice. In daily life, we need to practice formally for at least 10 or 20 minutes, or even 2 hours a day. Try your best to practice regularly in daily life. There are 24 hours in a day, and if we sleep 5 to 8 hours and practice meditation for 2 hours a day, then during the day we will be mindful and able to objectively observe our mind while we are working. The body is still working or doing its worldly tasks, but the mind is objectively observing. We can practice to be mindful with wisdom any time we are awake until we go to sleep. When someone's perfections are weak, even after they have meditated for half an hour, when they go back to daily life, their mind is lost in the external world and they are not mindful because of their weak perfections or paramis. They keep clinging to and enjoying watching television or the World Series and waste their time day and night. The world is always changing and creating something new to surprise and entrance us and cause our mind to wander. If we are not mindful with wisdom, we'll chase external objects endlessly without freedom. But if we are disciplined, we can manage our time and be mindful when we are eating, drinking, walking, showering, or cleaning. We should apply the practice in our daily life. Each time the body moves or each time the mind wanders off, we need to be mindful with wisdom to observe it. Then Nibbana is in front of us. Sometimes when we have some work to do that requires thinking or focusing, just concentrate on your work, and then when you are free from work, you can come back to mindfulness and wisdom. But if we believe that practice and daily life are two separate things, then Nibbana will always be far away. In your daily life, when you are working, if the mind wanders off in thinking or to an external object, just be aware and realize it can't be controlled and is impermanent. When you are working and feel lazy, just objectively observe the laziness, and wisdom will realize that it can't be controlled. You don't need to force it. Just simply relax with your work, but keep observing the laziness. When we objectively observe, everything shows us the three marks of existence, and finally the laziness will disappear. When the phenomena fades or disappears, we will be able to continue working with no attachment and clinging. Because we are objectively observing and separating the mind from the laziness, it cannot pull us away from our work. When we are meditating and feel sleepy, mindfulness will arise to be aware of it. Then the mind will separate from sleepiness, and wisdom will realize that sleepiness is suffering, can't be controlled, and is no self. The sleepiness is just the object to be known, and the mind is the knower. Sleepiness still exists, but there is no one who is sleepy and clinging to it. So sleepiness is not a problem for us anymore, but just an object or phenomenon that is arising, existing, and disappearing by its own cause. Wisdom sees that we cannot control sleepiness and separates the mind from sleepiness. Then the mind has been illuminated by wisdom. Sleepiness will fade away by itself and cause rapture or joy to arise, causing us to be happy and practicing. In the future, sleepiness will be just the food for the mind to chew. It makes us grow stronger. Next, when you have pain in your legs, objectively observe, and the mind will see that the pain is one part, the body is another part, the mental states that are reacting to the pain are another part, and the knowing mind, the knower mind, is another. There is no self in the pain. It is just a phenomenon. The degree of the pain is just something that we're in contact with. It is just a contact, and the mind can detach and be free from it, even though the pain still exists. If we still feel the pain is too much and cling to it, or if there's not much pain and we are enjoying it, that means that we don't have mindfulness and wisdom and need to develop the 5 spiritual faculties and 10 perfections. When we practice with the pain, we don't try to prevent or control it, but just objectively observe and see its true nature, the 3 marks of existence, impermanence, suffering, and no self, until the mind clearly understands and accepts this true nature of the pain. Even though the pain still exists, there is no one who is suffering from the pain. The path of wisdom is to see the body and the mind as they really are, which is impermanent, suffering, and no self. If we are mindful and objectively observing at the base, we will see everything in this world, material and immaterial, and even body and mind, falls under the rule of the 3 marks of existence. When our wisdom is strong, it will be impartial and equanimous toward everything, and the mind will accept everything the way it really is, the 3 marks of existence. The mind will be free from attachments and wandering off, because the mind clearly understands that things are impermanent and that we can't control them to be permanent, that things that suffer can't be controlled to be happy, and that things that are no self can't be made to be self. Then wisdom will guide the mind to be free from suffering, because it understands the true nature of things. When we are in a critical situation, we should examine our mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Is mindfulness arising spontaneously so that we are aware of it? Is concentration objectively observing at the base? And does wisdom see the 3 marks of existence, relax, and let things go more easily? Sometimes when the mind sinks into emotion and attaches to it for a long time, the reason is that it doesn't have enough energy to be aware and can't objectively observe. That means we need to put more energy into the mind, relax the mind, and concentrate on a single object or practice deep absorption concentration so that the mind regains energy and becomes calm and happy. Then we can come back to the present moment with mindfulness and wisdom. If you are very sleepy and mindfulness and wisdom don't have enough energy to objectively observe at the base, we can find something to focus on, like the Buddho mantra, with which we focus on inhaling on Bud and exhaling on Do. If this doesn't help, then we need to do more to make the mind busy. As an example, after we inhale with Bud and exhale with Do, we can count 1 and continue counting without losing track of the number until concentration arises. You can use any words for inhaling and exhaling to focus until concentration arises to focus only on the object, the breath, or mantra. At this moment, the mind will be bright and light, and happiness and rapture will arise and add more power to the mind. Then sleepiness will fade away and disappear by itself, because wholesomeness, concentration, and unwholesomeness, sleepiness, cannot arise at the same time. When you are distracted by sleepiness, don't try to focus on it or fix it. Just simply be aware of it with mindfulness. Then objectively observe the 3 marks of existence of sleepiness, that it's impermanent, suffering, can't be controlled, and no self. At this moment, the mind is already changed from unwholesomeness to wholesomeness. When we are practicing mindfulness and wisdom and seeing the 3 marks of existence, the mind will be drained of energy, and we need to regain its energy. A good technique when the mind is distracted is to chant and focus on a body part, such as the hair on the head, the hair on the body, the nails, the teeth, the skin, anything. While chanting, focus on the first one, then the next, until you reach the 5th, such as the skin, and then go back up, the teeth followed by the nails, etc., until you reach the beginning, and do it again and again until concentration arises. Be mindful in the present moment at the base and observe the body and mind. Let them arise by their own cause. When contact causes the mind to think, simply relax and objectively observe at the base and separate the mind from phenomena. The mind will see the cause and effect of the arising of name and form, the abstract concepts of mind and body. Then wisdom will see the 3 marks of existence. When, through wisdom, you see the 3 marks of existence, always observe how the mind reacts to phenomena, with like or dislike, satisfaction or dissatisfaction, feeling. The more we are aware of the feelings of disliking or liking, my feelings toward others and myself, the mind will become more equanimous and reduce the self or ego. Be aware of whatever contacts the 6 sense doors. If we're not mindful, we're like the foolish fish who gets caught by the fisherman's hook and bait. We're attracted to the bait that appears at the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and our mind attaches to it. We take the bait, and we become slaves to and are controlled by ignorance, which will prevent us from learning and practicing Dhamma. When we go to a retreat, we find we have many reasons not to practice Dhamma, like my illness, the demands of my family and associates, my lonely dog, or whatever. But when we go shopping or on a trip, we don't have these problems. But death doesn't accept excuses and is coming for us without fail. Most people like it when ignorance drops the bait at the 6 sense doors and creates wholesomeness, unwholesomeness, sadness, disappointment, or happiness, because they are captivated and attached to it and take the bait as their own desire or impulse. Then self or me has arisen. This is how we create ourselves. Whenever we create self in the present moment, this causes us to create a self in the future or in a future life. And this self is this cause of suffering, the one that suffers, which will follow us into the next minute, month, year, and life. Now that we are smarter and wiser and are no longer friends with the chief of evil, ignorance, we will be good friends with mindfulness and wisdom, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, Buddha's enlightened disciples. Right understanding leads us to walk away from suffering and the cause of suffering. We need to have more faith in the teaching, be stronger in our effort to practice Dhamma. Keep observing the mind in the present moment without attaching and clinging to whatever arises. Just be aware of phenomena, mental or physical, and bring the mind back to the base. Our job is to be mindful with wisdom, to see the body and mind the way they are. Keep seeing whether your mind is of good quality, with faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Make sure your 10 perfections are developing and support your path. The aim of life is directing our mind to walk the middle path, to free ourselves from suffering, and to escape death and rebirth. When the mind is free from attaching and clinging, it will know this freedom, and there will be no more cause for becoming, no future realm in which to be reborn, and no more rebirth and death. Then the task has been completed. There is nothing more to do, and the mind realizes Nibbana. Although there is no more to be done in the quest for enlightenment, worldly tasks still remain. Continue to practice regularly in your daily life and objectively observe in the present moment with mindfulness and wisdom. May all your practice blossom and be illuminated with the 5 spiritual faculties and the 10 perfections as you walk the path, and may this be your last life. Relax and enjoy. Thank you for listening to our Dhamma talk from Trisikkha Insight Meditation Center in Plant City, Florida. Anu Modana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.